Hi everybody, it's Autumn, and I do owe everyone and one of herself actually apologize. I owe everyone an apology for missing out last week on our style suggestion. I was really looking forward to do it. Unfortunately, my week was completely chaotic, what with going full-time at work, and I just completely lost track of the time, and just a whole bunch of stuff came up, and I'm so sorry. I will, if people like, what I can do is make another video and post in my own YouTube channel, which I'd be happy to provide the links at the bottom of this. But I'm not going to do that now. You know, we have this week's topic, which is perceptions on ourself and LGBT and whatnot. So I'm just going to touch on work real quick, and I'm going to go right into that. I don't want to make this some long dual 12-minute long video like I did last time. Yeah, so things have been well. Work has gone over very well, actually. Transition was very easy, thankfully. You know, I do get kind of misgendered sometimes from people, and I do get called by my old name and whatnot, but this is kind of be expected. You know what I've learned, honestly? I don't care one way or the other. Really don't. My friends know who I am. My friends treat me the same, who do work with me, and they always treat me, you know, as another one of the girls, pretty much, whenever they finally did know that I was trans. So those people who do tend to misgender me, and it's not often, you know, eventually they're just going to come around. You know, eventually they're just going to get over it, and they're just going to see a girl, and that's fine. You know, some people get really bent out of shape by it, and I wondered there for a second. It's like, should I harshly, you know, should I harshly criticize people for misgendering me and correct them on the spot? And, you know, honestly, I don't think so. I don't think it's worth it. I don't think it's necessary. You know, if someone consistently does it, and it's obvious they're not making any effort, and they're trying to do it just to be a jackass, then definitely, that's when I'll correct them and put them in their place. But that hasn't happened, and that's not the case, so there's no need for that. But yeah, actually, everything went so well, it was pretty much business as usual. In fact, there was a little backlash my own self because I built up something, you know, going full-time is this great shift in my life. In reality, it wasn't. It was just another day at the office. It was just another day going to work. And I got freaked out by it. I actually wondered, maybe I'm not trans. Maybe I'm making a mistake. Maybe, you know, I'm just fooling myself. And I realized that, you know, it's the subtleties that count, you know, because I'm not changing who I am. Obviously, I'm just bringing my body in line with my, you know, my neurology. So, of course, there's going to be a huge shift and change from me one day at work, you know, in boy clothes to me one day at work wearing girl clothes. They're just clothing. I haven't changed one bit, other than it's harder and harder to see myself, you know, as someone who's physically male, which is the point of transition, thankfully. Okay, so on to this week's topic, which, and I will read it verbatim, is: how do you perceive yourself among others, whether among other trans or society, etc., etc.? And I think that's a great question because there's something that's so, I don't know, it's something about being trans is so much that's based on perception just because of the physical changes we have to make. And then the perceptions or misperceptions about who we are. How do I view myself? That's very hard because sometimes I swear I don't view myself, or at least I don't think I'm legitimate enough. I have legitimacy issues, so I don't sometimes view myself as a woman, not because I don't think I am, but because I don't feel that I deserve to be. If that makes any sense, which is completely irrational, and it's probably just built up from external sources, particularly in society, that's reinforced from that because of a medical condition I have. But realistically, when I describe people, I don't even like to say that I'm a transgendered woman or a transgender woman or transsexual woman or whatever the case might be. I tend to view it that, you know, I'm a woman who's trans, or I'm a woman with a trans past or something like that. But even more than that, I mean, I'm a parent too, so more important than that, even I consider myself, you know, a parent first, a father second. You know, I consider myself a lot of things. perception, it's complicated, it's personal. I don't tend to overthink it, actually. I think a lot of us can overthink about our perceptions of ourselves and how others view it. I just try to be me, if that makes any sense. I'm Autumn, first and foremost. I think that's true of all of us. We think of ourselves first, and then, we think of the qualifiers, secondly, you know what I mean? So I can rattle my brain around it, but the fact of the matter is that I force myself not to think about how I perceive myself. Um, and then what? How how society views us, perceives us? I think that society as a whole, and when I say society, I should probably say cisgendered society. I think a lot of it is just misperceptions, you know what I mean? And it's miseducation. And unfortunately, I was actually in I wouldn't say argument, I wouldn't even say debate, discussion, difference of opinion, I don't know, which I guess is a debate, semantics, whatever, um, about, trans issues and going stealth or being public and whatnot. And, I kind of find it twofold. I think the problem is that, you know, even though this is a medical condition, proven and time again, supported by, God, what, over a dozen different, legitimate medical agencies that I couldn't even begin to list right off the top of my head, that a quick Google search will find you. I think the problem is miseducation amongst, people who are cisgendered. They just don't understand it. And that's why, honestly, I think that visibility is important. Now, having said that, I don't want to go out and have to explain my existence every time I got the door, because I'm a woman who's transgendered, you know, much like a woman who is lesbian doesn't want to go out and have to explain that she's a lesbian every time. She's a woman who happens to be lesbian, you know what I mean? For most of the people, that's just how it is. What makes them doesn't define them as much as who they are defines who they are. So the argument basically is that she believes, she personally herself wants to go stealth. She doesn't say that's the best option. She doesn't, she agrees it's probably the poorest option just because, visibility is needed, but that's her opinion, which is fine, and I can understand exactly where she's coming from. But, I don't think the perceptions of others are going to change until we educate them. And unfortunately, education, particularly with us, is going to come from visibility. Cisgendered people need to see how normal being trans can be. Other than the obvious kind of oddity, if I guess you could even call it that, of being trans, or rarity perhaps, just because there aren't, many trans people comparatively to the rest of the population. Other than that, though, I'm no different than really many of the other girls I work with, or other guys, and other people in general, People constantly talk about movies and life and shopping and family and kids and loved ones and pain and suffering and happiness and joy and etc., etc., etc. And it doesn't really matter. If you look out there, there's always something you can perceive, amongst others that you can latch onto, that you can connect with. And I think that's probably what's the most important part. So yeah, good topic this week. This is a hard thing to discuss, and I could probably talk on it much more in length, but I want to keep this pretty close, or pretty short. I don't want to go on to it too much longer. So yeah, I'm going to leave it at that for now. If anyone has any questions further, by all means, ask me in the comments section, and I'll be happy to answer the best of my ability. And I will eventually, at one point this week, put up that style video on my personal page, like I said, and everyone can check it out there. In the meantime, though, I hope everyone is well, and I will talk to you next week. Bye.